language and the posturing by Putin at the moment suggests, or certainly suggests, that both sides are trying to do everything to avoid another standoff. Is that a fair estimate?
Yeah, very much so. It's important to note at this point that the reconciliation between Ankara and Moscow is a very conscious choice that the two sides have made after the incident in Syria in 2015. Certainly as Turkey becomes more authoritarian and more divorced from the West, that's a relationship that Putin is very keen to cultivate. And it's interesting to see that he very clearly used the term provocation, say the aim of this terrorist attack was to drive Russia and Turkey apart. And ironically, it may end up pushing them closer together as a result instead.
How close together are they, given the fact that they're on different sides in the Syrian conflict? Or
it's a little bit difficult to tell at this point. I mean, they have very strong economic ties. And while Turkey is integrated into Western security structures such as NATO and is on the other side, or was on the other side of Russia in the Syrian civil war, but on the other hand, you see they have increasingly similar political systems, increasingly similar political outlooks, and increasingly are both becoming the victims of terrorism as a result of their intervention and their involvement in the Syrian civil war. So the coincidence of interest between Turkey and Russia is getting stronger and stronger, and the coincidence of interest between Turkey and the West is comparatively getting that bit weaker.
Neil, can we bring you into the conversation? It's always a difficult bridge to travel, isn't it, between the politics of rapprochement between Turkey and Russia and the economic consequences. Yeah. But they are quite substantial, and they have quite significant reverberations for Russia as well as Turkey. And those are positive for Russia. That's why Putin needs to keep this relationship, this corridor, open and stronger again.
Yes, they are important, and I guess you could say that the two countries are heading in opposite directions right now, because Turkey looks like it's dipping into recession, whereas Russia is now finally looking out the other side from what I think has been a 4-year downturn in growth. There's no coincidence that that's happening at the same time as the oil price has doubled since New Year, and also they've got a bit of a fiscal cushion going forward. So you might say that there's a bit more room for that to happen. But, you know, sort of opening that out, if oil does pick up and if we get a bit of protectionism from whichever countries, we do get inflation next year. That's the good news. Remember inflation? The less good news is that it's the wrong sort. It's cost inflation. We don't get paid for it. We don't skip to the shops and buy stuff. But that cost inflation, as we know from the past, tends to peter out after a while. So central banks will just simply turn a blind eye to that.
You mentioned the resurgence in the oil price and the resurgence in the Russian ruble, and this is WCRS, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got here,
This
Manus,
is year to date,
showing the year-to-date performance of the Russian ruble. Amazing what that uptick in oil prices will do. But Daragh, going back to the Russia story then specifically, I mean, how much is the economics informing what Putin is doing at the moment? The devastation we saw to the Russian economy by the weaker oil price was clear, but now we see oil prices heading higher. We see the Russian ruble on this road to recovery. How much does that influence what he does geopolitically?
I think it's pretty fundamental, or we think it's pretty fundamental to a lot of what Russia does. Now, Putin doesn't always understand how his actions will affect the economy, but it's very clear coming into presidential elections in 2018, with the Russian budget already quite tight, with the potential for fiscal austerity in 2017, that they are very keen to keep the Russian economy on an even keel. The Rosneft deal that we saw a couple of weeks ago will help shrink their fiscal deficit and ease up on some of the austerity that they've been planning for 2017 a little bit. But for maintaining social stability, for maintaining Putin's popularity, this is all very critical stuff.